A woman sits in the back of a patrol car, shaking.
I am freaked out after that crash, so...
Her voice cracks. Her hands won't stay still. Every part of her performance says victim. But a few feet away, a deputy is running a test that has nothing to do with shock and everything to do with what she drank tonight. Within the hour, deputies would discover she wasn't just another crash victim. She was about to become the suspect. If you're new here, we cover real investigations like this. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. September 6th, 2025, Bernalillo County, New Mexico, the edge of Albuquerque, just after dark. A call comes in over dispatch. A truck has run a stop sign and hit another vehicle. Not a fender bender, a full-speed collision, hard enough to send the truck rolling once, twice, several times before it lands. Deputies arrive to a scene that looks worse than the call sounded. One vehicle is a total loss. The other is crumpled where it was parked on the shoulder, and inside it, a woman isn't moving the way she should be.
You gotta take him, but it might be GBH stuff.
What's that?
That might be GBH. Her forehead was pretty caved in.
Oh, shoot.
So,
who's the
this
driver?
dude is parked here with the white truck here.
Her name is Daisy Duarte, 31 years old. She was parked, nothing more. Standing several feet away, uninjured, is the driver of the truck, 29-year-old Lauren Lucero, and she's already talking. Responding deputies piece together the mechanics of it fast. A witness nearby tells one officer he watched the truck come down the road weaving before it cut in front of another vehicle and swerved hard enough to launch itself off the pavement entirely. No skid marks suggesting a controlled stop, no brake lights, just a straight line ending in a parked car that never had a chance to move. There's nothing complicated about Daisy Duarte's role in this. She wasn't driving recklessly, she wasn't drinking, she wasn't even moving. She was sitting in a parked car on the side of the road when a truck she never saw coming ended her night and eventually her life. No rivalry, no history, no reason any of this should have touched her at all. She's simply the person who happened to be there when someone else's choices caught up with her. Deputies split into two jobs at once. Some work the wreck, trying to stabilize Daisy before the ambulance arrives.
We have an ambulance en route to you.
Others turn to the driver, still upright, still talking, and try to piece together what actually happened. At first, she's treated like exactly what she looks like, a shaken survivor. One deputy offers her a blanket. Another offers an ambulance just in case. If you change your mind, let me know, he tells her, gently, more than once.
Your mind, let me know.
Hi.
And I'll call you an ambulance, okay? And I think one's even en route.
Yeah.
If you change your mind.
I think
Okay.
my heart rate is through the roof.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you decide not to go, let me know so I can get your signature. Okay?
Okay.
And you can go with them.
Okay.
She declines the hospital. She says she's fine. She just wants to sit somewhere warm.
Let's go to my vehicle. I'll get you in the back so we can get you warm.
She's asked if she wants to be transported to the hospital just to be checked out. She says no. Then seconds later changes her mind, then changes it back. It's a small thing on its own. Indecision after a crash is normal, but it's the first crack in a pattern that's about to repeat itself over and over throughout the night. Nothing Lauren says in the first few minutes stays consistent for long. The moment she opens her mouth to explain the crash itself, something in her story doesn't sit right.
Why did you swerve?
Because someone was in the road.
Someone was in the road?
Yes.
A person?
Yes.
Also, there was already an accident ahead of you?
No, but someone was in the road, and I swerved, and I hit someone, and then I flipped the truck.
That's the whole explanation. A pedestrian appeared, she swerved, and the swerve sent her truck into Daisy's parked car. It's simple, it's sympathetic. If it's true, she's not a criminal. She's a driver who made an impossible split-second choice to protect a stranger's life. There's just one problem. No pedestrian is ever found. Not that night, not in the days that follow. No witness reports seeing anyone in that road at all. And there's something else worth noticing here. She never describes this person, not their clothing, their direction, their age, or which way they were walking. In the retelling, they exist only as a reason, a shape just solid enough to justify a swerve and nothing more. On paper, Lauren Lucero doesn't fit the profile deputies are used to pulling out of a wreck like this. She's an embryologist, a medical professional who works with human eggs and embryos inside fertility clinics. Educated, composed, the kind of title job that makes people assume good judgment comes standard. But titles don't drive trucks, people do. And the person standing in front of these deputies can't keep her balance on flat ground. It's a detail that runs through nearly every DWI case investigators handle, the gap between how someone presents on paper and how their body behaves in the moment alcohol takes over. Credentials don't override blood alcohol content, they just make the fall look more surprising from the outside. Watch the body cam footage closely, and the pattern becomes impossible to miss. She sways when she stands. She repeats the same sentence to nearly every deputy who talks to her, almost word for word, like she's reciting something rather than remembering it.
And I had to swerve, and I swerved aggressively into the, field, basically, and, yeah, it was pretty bad.
Okay.
So...
Who did you have with you?
No one.
Nobody? Okay.
Nobody.
Beyond the swaying and the repetition, there's the small, involuntary stuff body cam footage captures better than any report ever could. The way she can't quite finish a sentence in one breath. The way she apologizes reflexively, over and over to deputies who haven't accused her of anything yet. Then comes the detail that changes the entire shape of the story, the smell.
Lauren, you've done testing that requires you to speak a lot, right?
Yeah.
And when you speak, I'm detecting a very strong odor of an alcoholic beverage coming from your facial region. Okay, it's coming from your breath. Be honest with me, okay? This is my...
Her answer comes fast. I did have something spilled on me. Spilled, not swallowed. According to Lauren, a friend accidentally spilled beer on her earlier in the night, which in her telling is the only reason she smells like a bar at midnight. Except minutes earlier, she'd told a different deputy she hadn't had much to drink. Not none, not nothing, much. Now it's nothing at all, explained away by someone else's spilled drink. Two different stories, and she hasn't even left the side of the road yet. Detective Breakthrough, Part 1. Deputies run a series of field sobriety tests right there on the shoulder. Follow the fingertip with your eyes only. Keep your head still. Walk a straight line. She fails every one of them. That's the moment this stops being a roadside chat with a crash survivor. It becomes an arrest.
I'm going to place you under arrest for DWI, okay?
The deputy tells her, calmly, like a man who said this sentence more times than he can count. Before the handcuffs go on, he asks her one more routine question, where she was coming from that night. Her answer is short, vague.
Where were you coming from tonight?
Oh, just going through my friend's house.
Okay.
Nothing about the friend, the date, or the drinking, just a place name offered without detail, the same way she offered everything else that night, technically an answer, but never the whole truth. Arrest. She's handcuffed on the same stretch of road she insists a stranger wandered into. No witness comes forward. No pedestrian is ever identified. Just a wrecked truck, a crumpled parked car, and a woman whose account keeps shifting depending on who's asking. It's easy to imagine, watching this unfold, that the story might have ended differently if she'd simply told the truth from the first sentence. Deputies aren't hunting for a confession here. They're just trying to reconcile what she's saying with what's sitting in front of them, and right now, none of it lines up. But the odor, the swaying, the failed tests, none of that was the worst of it. Deputies hadn't even seen the most damaging piece of evidence yet. That was still waiting for her at the station. At the station, deputies run an official breath test, the kind that produces a number, not just a suspicion. The result isn't just over the legal limit, it's nearly 4 times over it.
Lauren,
Yes.
you're nearly 4 times the legal limit. You've consumed an enormous amount of alcohol tonight.
Yes, sir. I do remember that, though.
Regardless, you're 4 times the legal limit. I haven't seen somebody blow that high in a long time.
It isn't an insult, it's closer to disbelief. In his line of work, seeing someone function at all at that level is rare. For context, most states set the legal driving limit at a blood alcohol content of 0.08%. Lauren's result lands somewhere close to 4 times that number, a level typically associated with severe impairment, blackouts, and in some cases, loss of consciousness. She was behind the wheel of a truck in that condition. Then he asks the question that's been sitting underneath everything since the moment they met her. Why were you drinking so much tonight?
Why were you drinking so much tonight?
It's a long story.
Well, we'll be sitting here for a long time, so if you want to tell it, I'm all ears.
Well, me and my best friend are doing some things that are more than friendly. She doesn't want to say that they're more than friendly. Now she's gone on a date. Some dude. So.
That upset you a little bit. Yeah.
Sure did.
Oh.
Lauren's answer has nothing to do with the crash and nothing to do with Daisy. It's about a person she has feelings for, a close friend who that same night went out on a date with someone else.
Loves me, but doesn't quite love me the way I want to. So.
That's the origin point of everything that follows. Not a stranger in the road, not bad luck, a private heartbreak absorbed alone with a bottle that ends with a truck rolling through a stop sign into a stranger's parked car. There's a particular kind of tragedy hidden in that admission. None of this started with malice. It started with something painfully human. The difference is what she did with it afterward. Bigger twist. While Lauren sits in the back of a patrol unit explaining her love life to a deputy filling out paperwork, Daisy Duarte is somewhere else entirely. She's in an operating room, sedated, critical, undergoing head surgery for injuries she has no way of understanding, caused by a decision that was never hers to make. 2 women, 2 completely different nights unfolding at the exact same moment, connected by nothing but one truck and one intersection neither of them chose. A nurse checks in with Lauren around this same time, running through a basic post-crash assessment. Any pain, any numbness, any trouble walking. Lauren answers no to almost everything and declines any further workup.
And how are you doing right now? Good. Do you have any head, neck, or back pain? Any numbness tingling down your arms or legs? You didn't peer poop yourself? Okay. And walked in okay, everything is good? She's not having trouble walking?
Physically, aside from being nearly 4 times over the legal limit, she's fine. A few rooms away, or a few miles away by now, Daisy is anything but. Interrogation, the phone call. In the middle of processing, Lauren is allowed to call her father.
Hello? Hey, how you doing?
I got in a car crash.
What? Where are you at?
I am currently at press.
Did anybody else get hurt?
Nope.
It was just you alone? Oh, so, where are you now? You're at the hospital?
Yep.
At that exact moment, Daisy Duarte is already unconscious on an operating table. Her father, hearing none of that, believes her completely. He tells the deputy on the phone that he's sure this was simply a bad accident. He has no idea his daughter is being processed for a felony, or that the woman she hit might not survive the night. Unanswered question.
That swerved out of someone's way. Currently at press, back of a cop car, so. So, yes.
Did anybody else get hurt?
Nope.
It was just you alone? Oh, so, where are you now? You're at the hospital?
Yep.
You're not hurt? Well, Is there a police officer I can talk to or anything?
Yep.
Let me talk to him.
Hello, sir. This is Deputy Walker with the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, Mr. Walker, that's my daughter, as you've heard.
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll probably get charged with DWI or something, I'm sure.
Yes. The vehicle that she collided into, the female that was in the vehicle was rushed to the hospital.
Oh, there was another vehicle involved.
Yes, there was. And the lady that was in that vehicle isn't in great shape.
Oh, Lord. So we're still waiting for their condition to be assessed.
That's exactly right. That's what we have to wait to see.
He tells Lauren to call him again once she reaches the detention center and asks the deputy to keep him updated on the woman she hit. It's a small, decent request from a father who still believes, at this point, that his daughter's biggest problem tonight is a totaled truck. Detective Breakthrough, Part 2. Back at the scene, the deputy is finishing the criminal complaint, the formal document that lays out exactly what Lauren is being charged with. At this point, it's aggravated DWI. Then an update comes in on Daisy's condition. Still sedated, still critical, still in surgery. The charges are about to get heavier, and neither Lauren nor her father know it yet. Somewhere between the roadside and the booking desk, a just a bad accident has already stopped being an accurate description of what's happening. Trial. The aftermath. Daisy Duarte doesn't survive her injuries. Days after the crash, she dies in the hospital. The moment that happens, the case against Lauren changes shape entirely. What started as driving under the influence and injuring another person becomes something far more serious, causing another person's death through reckless driving. Verdict. A judge initially orders Lauren held in jail without bond, calling her a danger to the public. Weeks later, on October 14, 2025, a higher court reverses that decision. She's released to await trial under strict conditions. If convicted, she faces up to 12 years in prison. As of now, that trial hasn't happened. Under the law, she has not been found guilty of anything. The case is still working its way through the courts, and every detail here reflects the charges as they currently stand. Her father, still believing this began as a simple accident, has no way of knowing how far the legal process still has to go, or how different the ending might look from the phone call he answered that night. What's left behind this case is almost unbearably simple. One woman was hurting over a relationship that wasn't going the way she wanted, and instead of talking to someone, she drank until she was nearly 4 times over the legal limit, then got behind the wheel anyway. Another woman had nothing to do with it. She was simply parked on a normal night, doing nothing wrong at all. One of them is waiting for a trial date. The other one isn't waiting for anything, ever again. And somewhere in a phone that no longer rings, there's still a father who believed for a little while that this was just a bad accident. Always stay in control behind the wheel, because one moment of impairment doesn't just put your own life at risk, it puts everyone else's at risk too. If you want to see more cases like this, subscribe. We upload new documentaries every few days.